that was being tested at that time was suffering from a horrible facial tic.
The world knew Jim Carrey for his electric grin, wild energy, and roles that lit up screens in The Mask.
Hello, chérie. Où est mes taguets? Is it fake?
Bruce Almighty, and countless others.
And he saw that it was good.
He was the king of comedy, the man who could make millions laugh with just a look. But behind that laughter, something was quietly breaking. Fame, fortune, and flashing lights hid a deeper struggle. At 55, Carrey stepped away from the very world that made him a legend. Now, for the first time, he reveals the truth. A story that's not just heartbreaking, but profoundly inspiring. The Rise, from stand-up to superstar. Jim Carrey's journey to Hollywood fame did not start with fame or comfort. He was born on January 17, 1962, in Newmarket, Ontario, Canada, into a working-class family. His father, Percy, was an accountant and a musician, while his mother, Kathleen, stayed at home. For a short time, their life was stable, but when his father lost his job, the family fell into financial trouble. At one point, the Carreys even lived in a van while young Jim worked evenings as a janitor in a factory to help support them. From a very young age, Jim used humor as a way to cope with hardship. He was shy at school, but he discovered that making people laugh gave him a sense of belonging and confidence. His teachers would sometimes let him perform comedy routines at the end of the school day, which helped him realize that laughter could be his gift. By his teenage years, Jim was already experimenting with impressions and stand-up comedy. At just 15, he began performing in Toronto comedy clubs.
And there was much work to be done. We were to survive the elements.
It was not glamorous at first. He often bombed on stage, sometimes facing silence or heckling from the audience. Still, he did not give up. He practiced tirelessly, perfecting impressions of famous people like Clint Eastwood, Elvis Presley, and Jack Nicholson.
Well, I guess we're gonna have ourselves a nuclear holocaust.
By the time he was 18, he was earning small but steady paychecks as a stand-up comedian, though the family still struggled financially. His big break came when Rodney Dangerfield, the legendary American comedian, saw Carrey perform in Toronto in 1979. Dangerfield was impressed and invited him to tour as an opening act. This gave Carrey his first exposure to audiences in the United States.
He's the nicest guy in the world, the most talented guy in the world, and the smartest guy in the world.
Soon after, he moved to Los Angeles to pursue comedy more seriously. In the early 1980s, Carrey performed regularly at the Comedy Store in Hollywood, sharpening his skills and making connections. He auditioned for Saturday Night Live, but was not hired, which was a setback at the time. Still, Carrey's determination never wavered. He landed minor film and television roles, but his career did not take off until 1990, when he was cast in the sketch comedy show In Living Color. In Living Color, created by Keenan Ivory Wayans, became a cultural phenomenon. Carrey was one of the few white cast members on the show, and his outrageous characters, like the accident-prone superhero Fire Marshal Bill, quickly made him a fan favorite.
But I showed him different. Unsinkable, my good eye!
This platform launched him into stardom and opened the doors to Hollywood films. Then came the year 1994, which critics often call Jim Carrey's miracle year. Within just 12 months, 3 films starring him were released: Ace Ventura, Pet Detective, The Mask, and Dumb and Dumber. Each was a massive box office hit. Ace Ventura turned him into a household name.
Hey, Ventura! Ventura, make any good collars lately? Or were they leashes?
While The Mask earned him Golden Globe and Music Television nominations. Dumb and Dumber, co-starring Jeff Daniels, became one of the highest-grossing comedies of the decade.
And totally redeem yourself!
Still want to go to Aspen? Oh, yeah!
That same year, Carrey also signed a groundbreaking $10 million contract for The Cable Guy. an enormous sum for a comedy actor at the time. His career skyrocketed, and he quickly became one of the most bankable stars in Hollywood. By the mid-1990s, Jim Carrey was not just a comedian, he was a cultural icon. Children imitated his catchphrases, adults marveled at his physical comedy, and studios raced to sign him for new projects.
I needed some time to reassess my goals and get in touch with my true self.
You did that in a day?
Imagine what I could do with 7.
But as his fame grew, so did the demands on him. Hollywood offered him wealth and recognition, but it also placed him under constant pressure to outdo himself. Every movie had to be funnier, louder, and more successful than the last. While fans saw his goofy grin and wild energy on screen, inside, Carrey was starting to feel the first cracks of doubt. In many ways, the higher he climbed, the emptier he felt. His rise from a poor Canadian teenager to one of the most famous actors in the world looked like a fairy tale.
Do not go in there. Woo!
But fame is not always the happy ending it seems to be. This tension, the joy of success, mixed with the quiet ache of emptiness, would set the stage for everything that came next. The cracks behind the laughter. Behind Jim Carrey's infectious energy and boundless comedic performances, a different reality was quietly taking shape. As Jim's career soared through the 1990s, so did the demands placed on him. Audiences expected more physical stunts, louder performances, and bigger laughs.
Do you think?
Why would she have you meet her in a bar at 10 in the morning? I just figured she was a raging alcoholic.
Agents, studios, and promotional interviews added layers of pressure. Over time, his onstage exuberance became harder to sustain, not because he lost his gift, but because it was starting to feel hollow. In interviews and public statements, Carrey acknowledged the emotional cost of this relentless pace. He spoke of a low-level sense of despair that surfaced when he realized he was constantly performing a character, not just on screen, but off-camera as well. This sense of disconnection was, in his view, a kind of depression, a signal that he was out of touch with his true self, not just an emotional illness. Instead of labeling what he felt as clinical depression, Carrey reframed it as what he called a kind of deep rest. He stated that this feeling came when you are exhausted from playing a character for others and trying to maintain an image that is not truly yours. He also revealed that he had once relied on antidepressant medications such as Prozac. While initially helpful, he came to believe they masked deeper issues rather than resolving them. Carrey pointed out the danger in staying on medication indefinitely, since it could be a way to avoid confronting the real emotional pain. He described how these drugs can dull the signals your mind and body use to say something needs to change. While Hollywood thrust him into the limelight, Carrey's work demanded much more than delivering lines.
My guess is Finkel was snooping around, but actor recognized him. End of story.
Finkel took it personal.
His role in Man on the Moon, where he portrayed Andy Kaufman, required full immersion in Kaufman's psyche. Carrey stayed in character even off-camera, sometimes for days at a stretch. He described this experience as psychotic at times, highlighting how deeply it affected his mental state. That level of method acting, a disappearance of himself into another, blurred the line between performance and personal identity.
That's enough, perfect!
I don't like it. I want to do one more.
After the film, Carrey reflected on the experience as a kind of spiritual unraveling. He said, "Personas are often just ideas we cobble together, not who we truly are." The intensity of fame often comes at the cost of personal connection. Carrey's public image as a rubber-faced comic genius created expectations that left little room for vulnerability. He felt seen, but not necessarily known. For many, he was a one-man laughter machine. But when Carrey tried to share inner struggles, the world often did not understand. As he once explained, if you are always expected to entertain, acknowledging pain can feel like a betrayal of expectations. Over time, this creates isolation, a loneliness that amplifies the cracks behind the laughter. Tragedy and transformation. Even as Jim Carrey battled with exhaustion and depression, life dealt him heartbreaking losses that pushed his transformation even further. In the year 2015, Carrey faced one of the darkest chapters of his life. His girlfriend, Catriona White, tragically passed away at the age of 30. The news shocked not only Carrey, but also fans around the world.
To a new lawsuit facing Jim Carrey, his former girlfriend, the painkillers she later used to take her own life.
Their relationship had been complicated, with moments of closeness and distance, but the sudden loss left Carrey devastated. The tragedy grew heavier when Carrey became entangled in a wrongful death lawsuit filed by White's family. They alleged that Carrey had provided prescription medications that contributed to her passing. Carrey strongly denied the claims, calling the accusations a terrible shame and saying he would not give in to what he believed was an attempt to exploit grief. Eventually, the case was dismissed in the year 2018, but not before years of painful headlines and public scrutiny. Losing a loved one is always devastating, but for Carrey, the grief was magnified by the world's gaze. Paparazzi cameras followed him. Tabloids speculated about his private life, and legal proceedings became front-page news. Instead of being allowed the space to mourn quietly, Carrey had to navigate his pain while millions of strangers dissected it. At Catriona's funeral in Ireland, Carrey carried her coffin, a moment that was widely photographed and symbolized the weight he was carrying both physically and emotionally. For him, it was not just the loss of a partner. It was also another sign that fame could not protect him from life's deepest sorrows. Carrey later reflected on how the spotlight can intensify grief. Fame, which once gave him joy and admiration, now felt like a magnifying glass on his pain. Every emotion became public property. In interviews, he explained that he often felt like a man wearing a mask, forced to keep smiling even when broken inside. This period marked a turning point. Instead of doubling down on Hollywood projects or burying himself in work, Carrey began to pull away. He realized that movies, interviews, and red carpets could not heal his wounds. Instead, he sought something deeper. After Catriona's death, Carrey began speaking more openly about identity, ego, and the illusions of fame. He insisted that what people think of as Jim Carrey is not the real him, but rather a character created for the world. In one interview, he bluntly said, "Jim Carrey does not exist." By this, he meant that our names, careers, and roles are all temporary constructs, masks we wear, but they do not define the true self. This was not self-pity. Carrey was not painting himself as a victim of Hollywood. Instead, he was trying to communicate a new perspective, that chasing fame, fortune, and external validation cannot give lasting peace. What matters, he suggested, is inner truth and learning to live beyond labels. Tragedy forced Carrey to re-examine everything he valued. Where once he sought applause, now he looked for silence. Where once he thrived on performance, now he turned inward to reflection. The grief did not destroy him, but instead became the soil where his transformation took root. By acknowledging his suffering publicly, Carrey also helped to remove the stigma from conversations about mental health and grief. Fans began to see him not just as a comedy icon, but as a human being navigating the same heartbreaks that touch everyone. His vulnerability made him more relatable, and in a strange way, more inspiring. The Spiritual Awakening. As Jim Carrey stepped back from Hollywood and endured personal struggles, he began to search for something deeper than fame or fortune. This search turned into what many call his spiritual awakening, a journey that changed not only how he lived, but how he saw himself. Carrey started diving into books, ideas, and teachers who spoke about the nature of the self, the ego, and the illusion of identity. He was drawn to the teachings of Eckhart Tolle, a spiritual writer who spoke about living in the present moment and letting go of the false self.
It can only feed on a similar vibrational frequency or emotional frequency.
Carrey has often quoted Tolle and explained how these ideas helped him step away from the mask of celebrity. He also showed interest in Buddhism, transcendental meditation, and other practices that encourage stillness. These spiritual paths gave him tools to quiet his mind and recognize that the endless chase for attention in Hollywood was a trap. In the year 2017, Carrey gave an interview on the red carpet at New York Fashion Week that left people stunned. When asked why he was there, he said, "There is no me. There are just things happening." Many thought he was joking or acting strange, but Carrey explained later that he was serious. He no longer believed in the idea of a fixed self. For him, identity was just a collection of stories people tell about themselves.
I believe in icons. I don't believe in personalities. I believe that peace lies beyond personality.
Another moment that went viral was when he said, "Depression only happens when you need deep rest from the character you have been playing in the world." These words resonated with millions who felt pressure to perform roles that were not truly themselves. Instead of being seen as crazy, many began to see Carrey as someone who had found wisdom through suffering. One of the most visible ways Carrey expressed his spiritual awakening was through painting. In the year 2017, a short documentary called Jim Carrey, I Needed Color was released, showing his massive studio filled with large, colorful canvases. Carrey explained that painting became a form of meditation for him. When he picked up a brush, he was not acting, performing, or pretending. He was simply creating. His artwork often reflected themes of love, pain, politics, and spirituality. Through colors and shapes, he was able to explore feelings that words and comedy could not capture. Some critics were surprised by the raw power of his art, while fans saw it as proof that creativity can take many forms.
6 years ago, at a time when I was trying to heal a broken heart, I decided, well, maybe I'll paint.
For Carrey, it was not about selling paintings or gaining praise. It was about finding freedom. Alongside painting, Carrey also embraced a quieter life surrounded by nature. He often spoke about how being in the mountains, watching the ocean, or sitting in silence gave him more peace than any movie premiere ever could. Meditation became part of his daily routine, helping him stay grounded and connected to the present moment. He described this shift in a simple way. "I have had enough. I have done enough. I am enough." This statement, which he made around the age of 55, summed up his new philosophy. Instead of chasing more roles, more fame, or more applause, he chose to accept that he already had enough. That realization allowed him to let go of Hollywood without regret. He was no longer just the comedian who made the world laugh with Ace Ventura or The Mask. Now, he was a man speaking about deeper truths, about identity, ego, and the meaning of life. His words and art reached people who had never even been fans of his comedy, showing that his legacy was no longer just about movies. Life after Hollywood. When Jim Carrey reached his mid-50s, he made a choice that surprised the world. He stepped away from Hollywood. After decades of non-stop work, he decided it was time to live differently. For fans who grew up watching him in blockbusters, his absence felt strange. But for Carrey, it was the beginning of a life filled with peace, creativity, and freedom. Carrey's new life is far quieter than the red carpets and flashing cameras of his past. Instead of long movie shoots, he spends much of his time painting in his art studio. Huge canvases line the walls, filled with bright colors and bold faces. Carrey has said that when he paints, he feels free from pressure. It is not about money or fame, but about expressing himself honestly. Alongside painting, Carrey practices meditation. He explained in interviews that meditation helps him stay present and avoid being dragged into the noise of the outside world.
And suddenly, I was thrown into this expansive, amazing feeling of freedom.
He also spends time in nature, enjoying mountains, the ocean, and quiet moments that bring him peace, a sharp contrast to the chaos of Hollywood. Although Carrey stepped away from the industry, he did not shut the door completely. He returned in 2020 with Sonic the Hedgehog, and again in 2022 for Sonic the Hedgehog 2, playing the villain Dr. Robotnik. These films introduced him to a younger generation who may not have grown up with Ace Ventura or The Mask. But even in these returns, Carrey was clear. He would only take projects that truly interested him. He told news agencies that he was fairly serious about retiring, but if an extraordinary script inspired him, he might reconsider. His message was simple. He no longer worked for fame or money. If he returned, it would be for love, not obligation. Carrey also used his platform for causes he cared about. He spoke openly about politics, inequality, and the environment. At times, his outspoken views caused controversy, but Carrey said it was more important to tell the truth than to stay silent. He expressed his beliefs through both speeches and paintings, which often carried political messages. For Carrey, this activism was connected to his philosophy. He wanted to live authentically, without hiding his values to please others. This honesty marked another sharp contrast with the old Hollywood system, where actors were often encouraged to stay quiet about politics. Fans often wished for more movies, but Carrey made it clear he had no regrets. In a 2022 interview, he explained, "I have enough. I have done enough. I am enough." That short statement became the heart of his message. After decades of chasing applause, he finally realized that joy came not from outside approval, but from inner peace. This choice also highlighted the difference between what the world wanted from Carrey and what Carrey wanted for himself. The world wanted more comedies, more silly faces, more characters. But Carrey wanted to paint, meditate, and live quietly. By saying no, he showed that true freedom means choosing your own path, even when millions of people expect something else. Although he left Hollywood, Jim Carrey's impact on film and culture remains enormous. Movies like The Truman Show, Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind, and Dumb and Dumber continue to be watched and loved. Younger comedians credit him as an influence, and his unique style of humor changed the way comedy was performed on screen. But his legacy is not only about making people laugh. By sharing his struggles with depression, his grief, and his philosophy, Carrey left a deeper mark. He showed that even someone at the very top of fame can feel lost, and that healing is possible when you stop pretending and start being true to yourself. Jim Carrey's decision to leave Hollywood was not about rejection, but about freedom. After years of chasing applause, battling depression, and facing deep personal loss, he realized the spotlight could never bring lasting peace. Through painting, meditation, and spirituality, he discovered that happiness comes from authenticity, not fame. When he said, "I've had enough, I've done enough, I am enough," it marked the end of one story and the start of another. His greatest lesson is clear. True joy is not in being admired by the world, but in learning to live without needing it.